Hi everybody, this is the second video for this first session of the practice of physical geography. The first video is just a very short welcome introduction to the module, and now we have a series of videos, actual content for this first session. And this first part of the module is called, as it says there on the slide, Big Ideas in Physical Geography. We have a few sessions over the next few weeks where we will be looking at things like thresholds, magnitude and frequency and so on, thinking about some of the big concepts that underpin physical geography. And in this very first session, I just want to make the point that physical geography is itself a big idea. Physical geography is a particular way of approaching the world, a particular way of approaching problems in a certain area of science. I just want to get that kind of general introduction to what physical geography is all about and why it's special out of the way in this first session, before we then move on to some of those more specific, concrete concepts in the next few lectures. So we're beginning second semester, and the first point I want to make is that, well, for a lot of students, when they look back on their university careers, they think, well, this is really where the university work starts properly. First semester is all about settling in, looking backwards, checking that you've brought yourselves up to a good starting level. But now we're moving into the second half of the first year. We really can now start moving forwards with your degree work. So in this session, I'm going to talk a little bit about what this module therefore actually involves. What is it that we're moving forwards with? What is it that esc10038 is actually going to be involving? And a big part of that is, well, what does it mean to actually be a physical geographer? What do we mean by physical geography? We've talked about that to some extent in previous modules, but more specifically, what does it mean therefore for us to be physical geographers? And one important aspect of being a physical geographer is all to do with the research background to the discipline. This is very much a discipline based on research. Everything we already know obviously came from doing research in the past, and all the things that we don't yet know, of which there are lots and lots, well, we're going to deal with those eventually by doing research. And so the way that we do research is important, and within physical geography there are particular conventions, there are particular approaches to research, and a particular framework for organizing that this part of the program. So for the rest of this video, I'm just basically going to talk over a few slides to introduce some important concepts to you, some important ideas to you, to get you started on the module. Now, one thing that I am going to suggest is that as we work through these slides, you pause them occasionally. If I'm going too fast for you and you need to read through the material, pause me, shut me up, and have a good read of what's on each of these slides. So this one just runs through how the module is organized. There are weekly units of resources. You've already discovered that because you're working through them already. And those are based in the KLE. And that's a starting point for everything. Begin with the KLE resources. And if we have things elsewhere, for example, we have meetings on Teams every couple of weeks, we'll point you to those from the resources on the KLE, especially the module handbook, which is the first thing for you to look at. It's really important, obviously, that you read through the module handbook, because that's where your instructions are, and that's where the information is that you need for this module. So there'll be weekly units. There's a field exercise and a fieldwork debriefing associated with that exercise. This year, of course, we can't at this stage tell you exactly how that's going to work, because it's going to depend on how the COVID-19 situation turns out. So I've faded it out into grey there. We normally run it in weeks 6 to 8, but we will keep you informed. You don't have to do anything about that just yet. We'll keep you informed about the fieldwork exercise and how we're going to handle that as we move forward into the year. For each of the weekly units, there will be set readings, and there'll be follow-up material on the KLE, and then we'll have fortnightly live meetings on Microsoft Teams, and those should be in your calendar, in your timetable. The total length of time it should take you to do this module is 150 hours. That's what a 15 credit module is supposed to take. So you have lots of time in this module. In addition to those weekly units, you have lots of time to do the reading and to do the coursework. And the coursework is a 2,000-word essay and an end-of-module take-home short answer workbook. There's more information on that in the handbook, and I'll give you more information about them both in the live sessions on the Fridays, Thursdays or Fridays, where we have those live sessions. Check your timetable to make sure that you know when those live meetings occur. I'm not going to read through all this in detail, so this is one of those situations where you might want to pause the video and just read through these intended learning outcomes. This is what you're supposed to know about, or what you're supposed to be able to do by the time you've finished doing this module. So this is in the back of our minds as we're doing the teaching, and it should be in the back of your mind as you're doing your studying, as you're doing your learning. So pause me for a second here and read through the So second semester, this is where things really kick off. First semester was all about settling in and kind of looking backwards, if you like. Settling in, learning to study, doing those basics, questioning your prior knowledge and learning, realizing that you only should be using reliable sources. That's what first semester was really all about. Second semester, well, that's about new material and looking forward. And there's a bunch of different things that you'll be doing this semester. The first one, second semester, is that you will continue to learn some basic factual knowledge. People say that geography isn't about knowing where places are, and that's obviously absolutely true. But nevertheless, it is important in order to get to grips with lots of geographical issues. It is important to know where some places are. People talk about capes and bays geography. That's the geography that's all about where things are and what's where. You also need to know a little bit about the history of the subject, as well as knowing about modern methods and approaches, and you need to know about the ways in which the subject, physical geography, can be applied to solving problems, to accessing resources, to dealing with hazards, and so on. That's applied physical geography. So there's a certain amount of basic factual knowledge that you need. And I just want to illustrate that with this map of the Arctic. Why do you need to know where places are? Well, suppose I start talking to you about how interesting it is that the winter sea ice in the Arctic Ocean reaches as far south as Amagaselik, but it doesn't reach as far south as Nuuk. Now, that's actually a really interesting phenomenon, but it's not going to make much sense to you what I'm talking about if you don't know where either of those places are. Likewise, if I'm talking about, say, an oil spill in the Prudhoe Bay region, well, would an oil spill in that location threaten the Arctic Ocean, or is it nowhere near the Arctic Ocean? It's hard for you to join in some of these geographical conversations about really important issues, climate change, environmental pollution, and so on. It's hard to join in those conversations if you don't have some basic factual knowledge about what's what, where things are, and so on. So that's an important part of your learning in first year geography. The second thing that we'll be doing this semester is thinking about physical geography as a discipline, thinking about its history, its methods, the different ways that people approach it, what it means to be a physical geographer, and how within the profession different practices operate differently from how they might be doing in different professions. And there are conventions, if you like, within the discipline that you need to be familiar with, such as the idea of peer review, where scientists check each other's work before they publish it, which, amongst other things, gives you reliable sources to use in your study and in your coursework. And just to illustrate, or just to give you an example of that, at a very basic level, you've already been introduced to the idea of professional conventions because you've been asked in your previous work, and you're being asked in this module, to use the geography or the GGE house style for producing your coursework. And that's your first induction, if you like, into the idea of following professional rules or following professional conventions in your work. Another illustration of that we're talking about right now is the importance of understanding that professional framework for your discipline. So, for example, the RGS, the Royal Geographical Society, is a professional body for geographers, and it offers professional rather than academic qualifications. So I have a PhD, for example. Well, how does a PhD compare with a CJOG? Which one of those is an academic qualification? Which one of them is a professional qualification? And what are the differences between those different types of qualifications? So one thing you should do just now, you can either pause the video and do it right now, or come back and do it later on, but go and have a look at the RGS website and work out or find out what those different abbreviations mean. What's the RGS? What's the IBG? What's an FRGS? A CJOG? PhD? What are all these different things? Go away and have an explore of that professional context within which the discipline operates. Another thing that you'll be moving forwards with this semester is the approach and attitude of a physical geographer. And I just jotted down here a few things that you could argue make for a good scientist, a good academic, a good researcher, a good physical geographer? How do you work effectively? And these are some interesting ideas for you to, again, go away and think about. Change this list if you want, see if you want to add some new things, see if you don't agree with some of these things and you want to change them. But I would say that a good way to begin on your journey towards becoming an outstanding physical geographer would be these things on this list. Be rigorous and meticulous in your work. Don't be shoddy, don't be slapdash, be careful, be rigorous, be thorough, be meticulous. Certainly at a professional level in this line of work, and even at your level of writing essays, doing coursework, doing an undergraduate dissertation, don't make decisions or arrive at conclusions before you've searched for evidence and checked the evidence and made sure that you're using reliable evidence. Now, you will be trying to find things out because next on the list, you're going to be curious. Curiosity is at the heart of geography. So be curious, explore the details, but also ask the big questions. And finally, they question everything. Question what I say in these lectures. Question what you read in published sources. Check sources against each other and just make sure that you're double checking everything and questioning everything. And that's a really important aspect of your approach and your attitude as a physical geographer. And here's just an illustration of that in terms of the complexity, the uncertainty, the presentation of evidence in physical geography and how important it is for you to be really careful. So this graph and these maps represent selected data about how much melting of ice was occurring on the surface of the Greenland ice sheet over a period between the 1980s through to the 2000s. And on the left-hand side, you can see a graph marking each year, year by year, the areal extent, the area over which some melting was occurring. Because in the middle of the ice sheet, you don't get much melting, even in the summer. Around the edges of the ice sheet, you get more melting. But how extensive was that melting? And you can see that over the long-term measurements that we've got here, there's a gradual increase in the amount of melting year by year, which is what you'd expect in light of environmental change and so on. But look how much variability there is on that year by year. But then somebody here has selected 2 years to show you to illustrate change through time. But look what they've selected, 1992 and 2002. The two most extreme cases, making it look as if there's a much steeper rate of change over the course of time vis-a-vis the real rate of change over the course of time. And this is an important reminder that by being selective with your data, you can demonstrate pretty much anything you want. Suppose I'd selected this year and this year. I could have then shown you graphs, I could have then shown you maps that made it look as if the extent of the melt was decreasing over time. Even over a long time period, if I'd selected that one and that one. Again, I could have made out that there was a long-term decrease over time. So you have to be statistically rigorous and very careful in your selection of data and complete in your presentation of data to make sure that you're presenting accurately or to make sure that you're inferring accurately from the information which is provided. And this is probably one of the more important diagrams from today for you to go away and think about, just in terms of the reliability of things that you see in your reading and in your research around physical geography. And there's a reference here that you can chase up. You can find it online. I think it's also in the reading list for the module. But there's a nice case study here. You can pause the video and copy this down, or pause the video and follow that link or the link will be on the PDF files that I've put online for you. But just go and have a look at that paper by Huntley 2012, which just talks about some of those sources of uncertainty that you might encounter in physical geography. You don't have to read the whole thing in great detail, but just at least go and have a little look at that and try to figure out why I suggested you did look at it. So this semester we're engaging with new material, we're looking forward, we're not going to be just repeating ourselves, we're not just going to be going over stuff that you did back at school, and there's a lot of new stuff that we're going to be doing, and it's going to be focusing on the things that are on this slide here. The subject matter itself, your approach. We're heading towards your degree, that's your immediate target. This information, this work that you're doing now feeds directly into your degree studies. Beyond that, it feeds into your employment, whether that's a geographical line of work or otherwise, the stuff you're learning learning here is really important for employability skills, and I've put something about that in the handbook for you to look at. And once you're a geographer, you're always a geographer. So to a large extent, I believe and I hope that the stuff you're learning here is going to stay with you far beyond your time studying geography here at Kiel. Physical geography is itself a big idea. It's a way of looking at the world, and you're embarking on that right now. You're at the beginning of well, for some of you it'll be hopefully a very long and enjoyable journey into the heights or the depths of physical geography, where you can explore this fantastic discipline. Now, as you do that exploration, that voyage of discovery, if you like, into the discipline, I guess it's appropriate, first of all, for me to talk about an explorer, somebody who did lots of discovering in his time, but also to think about role models, partly because I suggested earlier what it should take, what it would take to be a great physical geographer, the kind of characteristics you should be aspiring to in terms of your own work. Well, maybe we should also, for each of us, think of some kind of a hero or heroine, a figure from the history of the discipline who we admire for some reason and to whom we can aspire. So I'm just going to give you, and again, this is a point where you might want to pause the video and go away and do some research of your own, but I'm just going to offer you Fridtjof Nansen as my physical geography hero. I'm not going to talk about him in great detail right now. You can go away and look him up. He was the first person to ski, or the first person to make a crossing of the Greenland ice sheet. He was a chap who embedded his ship into the polar ice cap so that it would drift round, and it was a way of him discovering how the currents in the Arctic Ocean worked. And it also got him, he was the person who travelled farthest north at one point, and that's reflected in this book. And then later on in life, after the First World War, he actually won a Nobel Nobel Peace Prize for his work helping refugees after the First World War. So he's a really interesting character, if you like, both from a physical geography and from a more human geography or social aspect of his life and work. So go away and look up Fridtjof Nansen and try and figure out why I've marked him down as being my physical geography hero. But the real question for you to go away and think about is, who's going to be your physical geography hero? Now, typically when I say that, people say, oh, Attenborough, oh, or somebody else off the TV, and that's great. But what I want you to do is think, well, why? What is it about whichever character you've picked up, whether it's someone from the present day or someone from history? Alexander von Humboldt, for example, he's another good one from the past. There are lots of heroes and heroines to choose from in the history of the discipline and in the present day. But what are you looking for? What makes a physical geography hero? So I've just pulled out here 4 of Nansen's qualities, and again, I'm not going to go through them in detail. I'll let you pause and read through those if you want in your own time. But what qualities would your physical geography hero have? And based on that question of what does a physical geography hero need to be like, who are you going to choose, who are you going to pick? And I'll be really interested, maybe on the discussion board, or stick up a tweet, but no, the discussion board would be a good place for this. And I'll maybe ask you in our live session, when we have our live sessions, who are your physical geography heroes, and importantly, what are the characteristics of these people that you think make them deserving of that hero or heroine label? I'm going to pause at that point and leave you thinking about that, and then we'll come back in the next video and follow on this first week's materials for the practice of physical geography. So don't go away completely, there's another video yet to come, but just have a break and have a think about your heroes or your heroines and the characteristics that make for a great physical geographer. And I'll see you later.